This is the after chapter discussion for 8.78F, and there's a lot of people here today. We're all very excited by this chapter, and let's just get it started out by going over what everyone's general impressions are of the chapter, how you felt about it, what you are looking forward to, what you're excited about, what stood out to you in this chapter, anything you want, just general impressions, uh, and I'll start out with mine, and then Ren, if you want to give yours afterwards, and then we'll go to everyone's reactions. So, I personally thought it was a phenomenal chapter, and there are just a few points I really, really enjoyed and want to touch on. But the pictures and the text as hyperlinks, they were awesome to see. It just like it kind of gave it a comic feeling to the text to just see these amazing moments captured in fan art. And it's like it's a really unrealistic wish for the future, but if every single major scene could have those kinds of fan art, that would be awesome. It's absolutely just not going to happen because of how difficult that would be to get going, but it would be amazing to see. Um, Fetahip's run to the coast was also phenomenal. Kelt unleashed finally, and the world will never be the same because of it. The horns chaos was all appropriate, and I actually enjoyed them being whisked off to the battlefield to Israel because um, just they were in such a difficult position as they were, and I couldn't see a good way that they would all get out of it unscathed. So I think getting them out like this was appropriate in a lot of ways. Though the pain it'll cause Pisces trying to abandon one of the people who are relying on him is going to really suck to see. But Ivory is there, and Ivory is the best boy, and he's going to make us all proud by protecting the slaves, the ex-slaves, I mean. And finally, the ending. I am so excited by that ending. I, a couple weeks ago, I was having a discussion about how um, Pirate Adam probably forgot about the elves and the gnomes in the Deadlands. And I was like, no, no, have some faith. They know what they're doing. They have a plan. And this is the plan. I'm so excited to see what is going to happen next chapter or the next chapters with the gnomes and the elves. Those are all my thoughts. How about you, Ren?
So yeah, I'm so hyped for what's coming next with that ending. Like, same for the gnomes, and also just how few of them are, but how few of them have such an impact. It's got me excited. Granted, I've been excited for this chapter for the past few months now. Like, I didn't know when it was happening, what was going to happen, but I've been looking forward to the start of this arc for like a year now, and it did not disappoint. So yes, yeah, going back to the beginning, it was. I definitely liked that Eren had that moment of defeat, and then all of the ghost friends and Naravia, like bringing her back to her senses and giving her back that flicker of hope, which was then able to build up in like our expectations until when she finally blew the horn and we saw the ramifications throughout the Deadlands and through the world of the living. As for the horns, they definitely needed to be swept away. Otherwise, it felt like they would have been out of the main story for far too long. They're so separate, being in Wapome, and of course, that does lead us to where they were taken, and that was to Fairhap and his glorious sprint across Chandra. and his perfect moment of silencing the previous rulers of Celt. Like, I think that's been one of my favourite. That was one of my favourite moments in the chapter, especially with having the hyperlink to the picture in question. And I'm just really excited to see what's coming next.
Yeah, I'm extremely excited too. Um, so let's go through these reactions now. Clay says, for 2 hours, I read about a mummy sprinting across a desert and I loved every second of it. How does Pirate do it? I don't know. It's a miracle.
It's
Donkey,
magical.
yeah, it's very magical. Donkey says, this chapter was a very TWI chapter. It was. It really was. You know, obviously there's the parallels to Ryoka's run a long while ago. I can see that as just like quintessential TWI chapter. Kimmy says, it wasn't what I expected, so I was mildly disappointed. If you want to give more thoughts on that, Kimmy, go ahead on why you were mildly disappointed in it. Soulscriber says, I loved seeing the reunification of the horns. The return of the banter is grand. Kissenver is adorable. Spanner says, I really liked the chapter. Fato's running was amazing. I feel that the horns reunion was slightly rushed. That might be because I built it up in my head, but it felt a bit anticlimactic. I'm gutted that Pisces can't help his or Pisces can't help his friends out. Ivory and Barebones will do well though. Gnomes rule. Vesker says, loved just about everything in the chapter. Loved the great art in between. Only thing I wasn't really a fan of was the body snatching really happening. Still looking forward to seeing how they'll solve that. Okay, Ren, do you want to go through the rest of the reactions?
Yeah. So Adoran says, I had Lord of the Rings music in my head while the app was running. I can definitely see that, like in Two Towers where they're doing the sprint. Um, Kimmy is clarifying that they thought that the chapter would start with a revival, and he also felt that much of the Horn's bets were off-screened. Jamara adds to that the lack of a revival scene was strange, but maybe in the next chapter it will be shown. Dorado also thinks it will eventually be shown, uh, probably when we see the vlog perspective. Part-time Hermit wishes that the Horns got the sword, but they might go back to Chandra. Mal, like I said, Vita Hap called out Westrum, and I'm laughing so hard. Best call out of all time. I wonder what the rest of the world will think of Westrum after that ban. Yes, it was definitely an amazing ban. And very, very true. Um, Bizima, or however you pronounce your name, sorry. Um, like others, Pacey's separation from his friends did not feel good, but after more thought, Avery and Barebones are a good point. Pisces can possibly also talk to his friends through them, especially with what we saw about how Fato can interact with his undead from a long range. Maybe Pisces developed similar powers. Jarm says Atwood said that only Vrok went after the body. It means Vrok is on the case. Rogue Noir Detective is back on the menu. Uh, we all love Rogue Noir Detective. If you don't, uh, you should.
I think we can all agree though that Relk is not a detective. You know, he likes to try and be one, but he's just not. He can't fill that hole. That's Kilbich's. Uh, that's Kilbich's forte. All right.
Yeah, but Drake Noir Detective is an awesome aesthetic. I don't care what anyone says.
Yeah. Um,
So, do you want to go, Wiggles?
oh yeah. I'm just going to read off the next three or so reactions, and then we'll move on to the questions. Uh, Part-time Hermit says in response to Jermaro, tinfoil hat theory, only Relk went since God Aaron killed Kilb. I really hope that's not the case, but we'll see. Ederon says, I am not sure if I like the body snatching thing. It will be another plot point when so many others are still open. Clay says, buddy cop slash detective mystery chapter incoming. Maybe someday. Jarmaro says, only Relk going after Aaron implies a gentle carnage in the inn after the resurrection. It's true. Or Relk is only the only one fast enough to follow after Aaron. We'll talk about that later though. That is one of the questions. So we'll talk about that. Uh Medmir says in response to Jamaro's revival scene comment, I think they did not show another failed resurrection because it would have been too disappointing and frustrating to the readers to justify the effort it would have taken to write. So I'm okay with that. And yeah, I actually had a point about that earlier in Patreon spoilers, but I was thinking about it, and it you can reorder the chapters in this finale just to um, have it all feel different, you know? So if instead of getting this chapter right now, we got Rags failing the resurrection at this point in time, just like we could feel the despair. We could feel it extremely intensely, and that's a very dark point in the story, and it's a very dark area to take it at the finale. And I'm sure some readers would have liked that, but I think it would have been a much more divisive chapter than this one was. How do you feel about that, Ren?
Yeah, no, I kind of agree with that. Though, and what I'll be, I think we'll have hindsight to like, significant hindsight, and hindsight is 2020. After these next few chapters, like that's going to be
Yeah,
the next few chapters could really enhance this one, or not
absolutely.
have much of an impact.
Absolutely. So yeah, we'll see in the future. Jamaro says, I don't know, the possession sounds like too big of a scene to be off-screened. Um, Soul Scriber says, I rather like the idea of having the possession being off-screen to leave it up to our imagination, having the confusion of Aaron felt by the readers as the reveal comes to us at the same time. Vesker says, don't think it will be off-screen, feels like we'll see it because what's happening seems separated by what's happening on which continent. All right, let's move on to the questions now. And as promised, I am going to give 5 or so minutes for Asteria to talk about how much she loved Railt being freed. And that's
Oh,
question
yes.
number one. Railt.
Yes, yes, yes. This is a long sought after conclusion to one of my favorite sub stories in The Wandering Inn, and I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I did. But yeah, last we left Relt, he was being captured by his enemy as he saw his daughter taken away screaming after the death of his best friend in an effort to rescue her. And now, after much teasing and check-in, we finally have this ultimate wonderful scene of where they're reunited, and I absolutely adore it. This was one of the highlights of the chapters for me. Thank you, Wiggles, for forcing me to go back and read in more detail, a little bit more slowly.
Yeah, I can't believe you were telling me you had ended reading the chapter, and I was like, "Are you sure?" Because I'm not seeing the reaction I was expecting. And I
uh,
learned you're a skimmer. That's not good, Asteria. Not good.
I usually skim and then I go back and read the next day. But yes, I stayed up last night reading this, and I think for me this scene just really highlights the fact that there are all these sub stories going on, and Pirate doesn't forget. Like she comes or they come back and they wrap things up, and they do it in such a way that it's just highly satisfactory. Sometimes it's a very long payoff though. uh, But yeah, I adore this scene. I'm very much looking forward to see where Rel is going next. There have been hints that he's going to be, I think, a key part of what's coming up. That sort of Feto is saying, hey, like drop your petty wars and like let's get down to business with facing off, what's in the Deadlands. And I think like there have been hints that some people have picked up on this, and Rel was one of the early characters that also was picking up that something else was going on. So I'm really excited to see what's going down, especially because his daughter now is basically ruling the nation. So that allows him some freedom to do some other stuff. And I don't know if anybody else picked up on this, but Pisces shows some interest in that golden bell that he has. And we know that Pisces has been kind of working on his fencing abilities in addition to his magic. So I'm kind of sensing that maybe there'll be some cool mentorship going on there. And I wouldn't mind a face off of Ascross versus Rael for best mentor. Anyway, I'll open it up to other people. Did anybody else appreciate this scene? Did anybody else have any other thoughts?
While you guys are typing, I'll just go ahead and give my reactions. I was very pleased by that. Like, I knew as soon as Fedohep was going to the coast that this would be the chapter that Rail was freed. I was just very I was anticipating it greatly because it's a perfect end to King Purik's reign. It's like, oh, he just got rolled over. There was no fight. He just rolled over because he's a terrible king. And we got to see that in full view here with Rail's rescue. What about you, Ren? How did you like
Yeah,
the scene?
I definitely liked it. While I don't love it as much as Asteria, I don't think that's possible. I was definitely happy to see that scene. That was like a solid conclusion. My only complaint is that we didn't get to see Pura get skewered.
Yeah, that would have been very nice. But even I guess even Purik at this point might be useful with the Seam Walkers on the run.
Well, but he already actually kind of got one of the, like, I mean, I know we wanted to see them all die, but he kind of actually got like the ultimate disservice, right? Feto is assembling all these people to combat this thing in the Deadlands, and who's the one person that he didn't call? The King of Medain, right? Even in that moment, and the King of Medain is all about trying to be showboaty and trying to get everybody's attention and be a player on the world stage, right? He was pissed that he got ignored during the Queen of Jacross's judging, right, the order of the kings and queens and rulers, sort of dispensing advice. He got ignored there. People aren't paying attention to him. So for Feto to just totally cast him aside, I thought that was the ultimate kind of like fuck you to him, other than just killing him. But lots of people agree with me that he is amazing.
Ren, do you want to go ahead and read the reactions?
Yep. So Brack has left a series of emojis which as a perfect representation of what they feel, as it's a load of oranges, heart oranges, and a orange rat, because of course we have to have an orange rat. That wouldn't be TWI without the rats, and not because of TWI. Kimmy finds it weird that Rio didn't lose his king class. Did we see that he still had the king class? Or is he just addressed as it? I, I honestly don't remember.
I don't remember if it was like, and it's always good to be wary of that kind of thing in the narrative because Paranava does just use class names for people even if they don't necessarily have that class at the time. So I think it's still up in the air whether or not he's lost the king class. But
Yeah,
you know, even if he had, he'll regain it eventually, I think.
or
Or
he'll
something
get
else.
something else that is adjacent. So Clay says that maybe Pisces will finally get his spellsword class after working with Lot to do something with that extra mage class. Yeah, no, that could be a solid idea. Though it depends on whether or not he would need something to like fencing class to consolidate into it, or if he could go straight from mage to spell sword. Spanner says that Golden Bell was a level 30 plus duelist, or duelist without peer recognized. I believe Pisces might get his silver belt in actuality and not steal it this time. Kemi says that TWI warships are absolutely massive aircraft carrier seas. 10,000 people on one, and Antonium stole 200 of them. So I don't think that it's quite that they're that big, but more that you can quite literally cram it undead in. You don't need to worry about them needing to move or have any space or anything like that. Part-time Hermit is saying that obviously that Pyrrhic survived. Violet is saying that we have had the Twin Kings, so maybe something like that with Violet and Jaquina. Spanner says that Jaquina had Queen Temporary. Violet might have Queen disposed. It's possible. Part-time Hermit saying Pyrrhic getting left behind as kind of like how Eren goes to all of the world except Lucia. Agreed, kind of, yeah. Jamara says that Vito Hep called him real Jackless, and the same line as calling her Queen Jaquina a Jackless.
Yeah, I definitely think Fedo Hep himself thinks of Jaquina as the queen now, since she's
Yeah,
earned it. But
Nana is saying that it's more likely King abdicated that Riot has.
yeah,
And Spanner's responding to that, saying that he didn't officially abdicate, though he probably will now.
yeah. Okay, so I think that's all the reactions for this so far. And we do have a lot of questions, so I'm gonna move us on from this particular topic onto our second question of the day. It's we saw a fair bit of the impact from Eren blowing the horn, but what about the places we didn't see it affect, such as Alien Damas, or the Newt? Did any immortals hear the horn? Um, I don't. Oh, here. Actually, I was gonna do this for this chapter. Here's the question for you guys, and in case anyone wants to know what question we're on. But for myself, I don't actually know what will happen in Alien Damas or the Newts. I think at least for Alien Damas, they're not going to care very much because they're in a very bad war right now. So I don't think they're really going to care. The Newts, I think it's kind of a similar situation too. And I'm not sure if anything good will come of hearing it, even though I think the whole world might have heard it too. But we'll see. Um, on the second part, did any immortals hear the horn? Probably, maybe. I don't know. Everyone in the Deadlands heard it, so why
At
not
least,
everyone in
yeah,
the Living Lands?
we know dead immortals heard it.
Yeah, that's true. Dead immortals did hear it, which is kind of an oxymoron. Dead immortals. Um, what did you think, Ren?
So, the first part of this question is one that I actually put down last night. And I don't think for like, the Newtons, Alien Damas hearing the horn will have a positive effect, so to speak, but I'm just curious as to the impact that it's going to have on those people that hear it. Because, like we saw with the the knights in the Telangian Crusade, like, no, something is happening, and we need to be a part of it. We can't just die on Far Chandra when there's this call to arms going on. And that actually led them, like, offering to join for that to happen, what he's doing, if I'm not mistaken. So, while it might not have a big impact, I could see. I'm just curious as to how it's going to touch, like, the people on a personal level, as opposed to how it's going to impact the wars.
Yeah, I can definitely see, at the very least, all of Aaron's friends will hear it. I think it'll have a profound impact on them and how they're reacting. I think maybe if we do get the Rag scene and the Aaron scene, we'll be getting that horn moment with them, and it'll like cheer them up. It'll tell them that Aaron is still out there.
Yeah, same with. I could say like Ryoko or her, maybe Kara. Obviously, they've never interacted, but as we said before, the whole of the Deadlands heard that, and the Knights heard it in the Land of the Living. So who knows?
Yeah, it's definitely possible that a lot of people did hear it. All right, let's move on to reactions that everyone's typed out. Also, feel free to talk, people, if you want to. If you want to ping me or Ren to talk, you can. We're not the only two people who can talk here. But let me just read out these reactions anyways. Clay says, I wonder if Zerhul heard the horn. That's the big new question, I think. Medimir says, Eldovin may have heard it, or maybe Teriarch would have, thus waking him. Spanner says, Rochelle didn't bloody hear the horn. That was very much stated. Yeah, absolutely. Rochelle is not a friend of Aaron. Enuryn says, I thought the horn is just for allies. Yes, it is, but Aaron considered basically the entire Deadlands her allies, and an extension of that maybe she thought of as all of the living lands outside of Rochelle as her allies too. So maybe everyone heard it. That's possible. I don't know if it's likely. We'll see. Clay says it in response to Edoron's comment, it is, but also potential allies. Almost the whole world heard it. The Crusading Knights are a good example. Soul Scriber says, I would be surprised if Ryoka and Aelin Damas didn't hear the horn, considering it's mainly for allies. Jawaddle says, yeah, it was. Rochelle was the only one who didn't hear the horn as Aaron dislikes them. Slucky says, did the dead goblins hear it? Did they attend him in their heaven? That's a good question. It is a very powerful artifact, so I'm going to go with yes. Part-time Hermit says, Ryoka heard it when Aaron blew it on a solstice. Soul Scriber says, you could say that in this chapter, horns have unified in more way than one. Horns of Hammerod and Aaron's horn. Is that a pun? I think that might be a pun. Kel says horn. Did you want to speak as well, Kel?
Yeah, that's why I pinged you. I think you already said what I was going to say, but I think it's safe to assume in this case that everybody but Rochelle heard the horn, including in the Living Lands. It's just that there's not enough page space to have every perspective of every actual ally. Like, we haven't seen Dishonest respond, we haven't seen the Goblins respond, we haven't seen the Gnolls respond, list score, anything like that. That may be upcoming, that's just, we don't know yet, but it's safe to assume that they have. We just haven't seen the reactions written down. And there's too many of them for us to see all of them written down.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right in that it's a lot of reactions and we can't all do it at once. But if we get scenes from those point of views in the future, we might get that horn blowing scene as like a timeline check of where the timeline is in that chapter. So we could see that.
I hope Pirate's listening because that's a really good idea.
All right, let's keep moving on. Melly says, if Aelindamus ignores the horn and Fedahep's use of the Dragon Ward bell, it just proves to me how foolish the mortals of Aelindamus truly are. My opinion of the mortals of Aelindamus is that they are old beings with great power but act like children. If they can't see the bigger problem coming, then they deserve what they get. Germaro says, no talk about the fascinating lore about the horn. There's a lot. There is a lot we can go through in this chapter, and unfortunately, we're going to miss some things, including that probably, and also
Yeah,
things like the ever flowing grasslands.
yeah, I think we could do an entire discussion on the lore behind the horn and the dancing man.
Yeah, it's absolutely fascinating how he seems to be a traveler from a different pantheon, like Norashul is a traveler from a different world, basically. And so he's like foreign to Inworld in its entirety. And that's a really fascinating thing we could spend a lot of time on, but we're not going
Yeah,
to.
at least not in the main discussion.
Yeah. Do you want to read out the rest of the reactions, Ren?
Yes. So Kimmy says that they find that accusing Erin of lack of experience of using horns to stay so, as she used a horn in 7.58 and 4 times at that. Natamir responds with, she's not really wanted to toot her own horn now. Adron says that the reactions of a horn call will be a big part of the next chapter, I think. Yeah, I could see that. Coldbringer responding to Ellie. Vess is potentially setting up Ryoka going nuclear and stealing the scroll as she decides the alien dinosaur mortals truly are useless. In the great fight to save the world, she will go rogue. Kimmy says that love and dance is a foreign concept in the world, it seems. Tell that to Lord Bell. The ultimate Lord of Love and Dance.
All right, it seems like those are all the reactions for this question right now. We're going to move on from it. If you have any more reactions you wanted to type, just keep doing it, and I'll come back to them in a minute. But let's move on to one of the bigger questions we have, and has 4 sub-questions. So I'm just going to do all of them at once, okay? We're going to do it all at once. Question 1, who hijacked Aaron's body? Question 2, Aaron's body ran off, but the only place it could go is the dungeon. Mother Gray's about to be shown? Also, okay, I don't like this question because it assumes things and it's wrong. So you don't have to answer it in that way, but basically, where is the body going? Question 3, if it's one of the 2 missing gods, where'd they go? Question 4, how many goblins not Aaron killed running off? And question 5, how strong is Aaron if possessed by a literal god? That's a lot of questions for this, but we can answer any of them as we're going through. And I will start us off, and Ren, if you have any thoughts on this as well, we'll go to you next. But oh yeah, I'm gonna copy and put it all in the chat for you guys since this is a big one. But Aaron's body, who hijacked it? My thought is Kalwine, the warrior goddess, because kind of narrative reasons as well as just like gut feeling. Basically, it's like Tamaroth has somewhere he can run to right now. He has a reason he could be gone right now. He has Laken. I know someone corrected me on how to pronounce this a while ago and I've completely forgotten. But he has Laken he can hide away with. Laken.
Lakin.
Okay. He has Laken he can hide away with, but Kawain doesn't really have that kind of thing where she can really disappear. So I just think Kawain makes the most sense as to who is in the body right now. Where it's gone. Kawain is the goddess of warriors, and there's a giant war going on in Israel. She's going straight towards it. That's where she's going. She's gonna go to the war and try and get followers there, try and get champions there. Um, I don't think Kawain killed anyone actually when she got into the body. I think she disabled people, but I actually don't think Kawain is the kind of person who would kill people just for getting in her way. It sounds weird because she's been eating a bunch of ghosts for thousands of years and just consuming souls nonstop, but I still think she has somewhat of a conscience. Um, how strong is Aaron if possessed by literal God? Extremely strong, level 100. All right, that's all the answers I got. You go ahead, Ren.
So I definitely think it's Cohen. It's just out of her and Tamaroff seems the most logical. I feel like Tamaroff would be too proud to possess someone that wasn't a ruler, in part, as well as there's also Tamaroff having that connection to Lacan, and I think that that's going to be his focus, just like Enuryn has been focusing on Aaron. Um, for I could definitely see possessed Aaron going to the Newt as opposed to the dungeon. Like, or either to the Newt or towards the Liscore via Liscore Hectwell War, because we know that at the point this is happening, that's at its peak. Um, but yeah, the only reason to go to the dungeon as to start a new conflict that, with everything that's going on right now, is not necessary. Also, I think that it's possible that this conflict could wake the dungeon up anyway,
Yeah,
without Corey needing to go there.
yeah, I do think it's. I think the dungeon, if it's like the Labyrinth of Souls, it might start getting overrun or something by, uh, it might start overflowing, I should say, and that could really spell some bad times coming to Liscor's way. Um, but you're right. I definitely disagree with the dungeon being the only place she can go. Like, just disagree with that fundamentally. I don't think that's where she's gonna go. But let's get to some of these reactions here. Clay says Rogue Aaron might have gone to kill Lakin to weaken Tamarath, especially if it was Kawain who stole her body. I don't know. Maybe that. Maybe. I could see that. Pat is helping me with pronunciation. Thank you, Pat. Spanner says Aselfa did it. Uh, I'm gonna say no to that. Aselfa didn't do it. But anyways, Coldbringer says I'm answering only some of the questions. Aaron got possessed by Kawain, the goddess of youth and war. Tamarath already has dibs on Lakin's body as an avatar, and Aaron doesn't have the possibility of growing a beard. Yes, that's a very important point. Aaron can't grow a beard. Yes. Um.
I disagree with that. I think that if you get possessed by Tamaroff, you just develop a beard
Oh, yeah.
instantaneously.
Yeah. Just the beard just like forms around your face immediately. 1 second it's not there. The next there's this lush beard. Uh. Okay. Coldbringer also says, I'm predicting that a god-possessed Eren will be physically the same, but will have an aura beyond compare, an aura that Eren keeps a fair bit of after the god is exercised when Eren truly comes back. That's a interesting point. It'll be really fun to see what kind of consequences there are for Eren, but I don't know if powering her up a lot like that will be necessarily the best play. Well, I shouldn't say that. It wouldn't be a play that I would necessarily agree with too much. But it's yeah. Clay says, in response to Coldbringer, this would explain why only Relk is going after her. He has indomitable will. Yeah, that could be an explanation, yes. Enuryn says, don't get me wrong, I love that chapter, but why even do the body snatching thing? Either pirate is going complete in rage with 50k word chapter, or so many plot points are being left behind. Crap. Metamir says, I think Fetahep requested the artifact that could trap a powerful soul because he suspected that one of the gods possessed her. And yes, I think that he doesn't know it's a god, but he knows it as something that is extremely similar in power. And so he suspects one of those things did it. He basically thinks something very close to a seam walker possessed her body. Mr. Europe says Tamarath would never possess someone who doesn't have a beard, but as we pointed out, that beard will grow. Maybe. Part-time Pyramid says whoever finally slays Tammy would be the savior of N-World. Thank you, Hermit. I love puns.
Thanks, I hate it. No, I don't.
I'm being sarcastic here. I hate puns. Hate them. Hate them, Hermit, okay? Ren, you take over. I'm sad.
So, Basma says that how possible is it that Eren's body got hijacked by a character associated with the dungeon? E.g. a head snapshot tape. I ask because of the language Fetahep seem to use something rather than someone has possessed Eren. I think that's just because, like, Fetahep doesn't have the full picture. He doesn't know about the gods, and I don't think the seam walkers are the kind of thing that you would attribute personage to. So something would definitely be accurate in his mind regardless. Turns out that Clay was saying exactly what I just said. With the addition that Fetahep only knows that there's 6 of them and that they're a great enemy. Violet says, as she's looking for the greatest battle, she would be heading towards Teriak. Possibly, but that's a bit far away. Ordle are saying, do the dead even know that the 6 are gods? Or are they just seen as these all-powerful forces of evil?
Well, to answer that, just real quickly, most of the dead, they kind of understand it at this point, it seems to be, but they can't say it. They can't get past the god block or whatever. And when Eren tried to tell Fetahep explicitly that they're gods, he, fainted. An undead creation fainted, hearing that they're gods. So yeah, they don't say they're gods, but they like describe them in explicit detail to Fetahep, and he's kind of formed his own conclusions based on those descriptions.
Yeah, and Claire saying that Kelter said that there are 3-letter words, so possibly. Miller saying that is asking if Azkaresh will be redeemed because of Soul Cage. How many people will find out about Azkaresh still being alive? And will he go after them like he did to Ryuka? And I don't know if he'll be redeemed, at least no more than he already is being. It's the same kind of not really redemption, but it's highlighting that there is more to him than Azkaresh, that there is still Pearl Chandler. Clay says that I hope so redeemed through death is overdone and an easy way out. Ending a redemption is so much harder and more interesting. He needs to atone, not die. And from the looks of it, that is the end of responses for this question.
All right, so let's move on to another question. We're gonna skip over the Labyrinth of Souls and the Soul Prison question for now, since those are a little bit unknown, and we have a lot we can still do. So we're gonna do with Orthonon and Flosgon. What will Teresa and possibly Trey do with Rhyme? And just as an added little part of that question, do you guys think Trey will meet up with Floss on the sea, or will Trey and his gang just reach Chandrar instead? Um, to the original question, with Orthon and Flascon, I do think that Teresa is going to have a hard time of it, but I think a lot of their enemies have backed off right now. Like Nerhavia has been effectively neutered in their country for now. So, and they still have Mars. They still have Veneth. What's his name? Veneth. Veneth.
Feneth.
Veneth. Veneth. Okay. They still have Veneth. They still have a lot of the higher level people around. So they're not defenseless by any means. And I think they can hold off for as long as it takes for Floss to be done um, in Israel. And another thing to keep in mind is Kelt knows that, or Fedaheb knows that he's basically taking the head of state from another country. So if something bad happens to Rhyme right now, I think Fedahep would be willing to step in because it would be his fault if he's taking away the head of state and some of their high level warriors and then they get immediately steamrolled by Nerhavia. So I think he would be willing to step in. Uh, on where Trey and such will go, I think Trey and his company, or his gang, are going to end up uh, meeting Floss at Sea simply because they're on the Luminary. It's the fastest ship in the world, and they're already on the way to Chandra in the middle ocean, so they're gonna crash course. We're gonna get Amaris and Floss reunion. We're gonna get Trey getting kicked off the ship because he's too young to do this all. It's gonna be great. What do you think, Ren?
So I agree for I feel I will definitely. He seems like the kind of revenant that would work with Ray, help Rhyme if they get screwed over by him taking Floss. Uh, but yeah, like Teresa's. It's a chance for Therese to grow, which, well, she has had a little bit of growth with the Siege of Rhyme chapters, the Siege of Rhyme, but in the I she definitely has a lot more to go compared to Trey, who's been the primary focus of the twins. Uh, and I agree that Trey will probably meet up with Floss at sea. That just seems like the logical step. Like it's
Yeah,
partly because
I
it's like it will be the perfect place to see the first big battle that they're going to. As a potentially
yeah,
perfect place to see Amaris do her work.
absolutely. It would be really cool to see Amaris in action. I just want to see the reunion between her and Floss. It would just be really cool to
That
see.
too.
Um, Kel, I saw you got rid of your ping to speak. If you don't want to speak, that's fine. But if you wanted to, just ping me again. Clay says, weren't Trey and the gang near Israel last we checked? They were on the open ocean. heading away from Wistrom, going to Chandra, basically. Which, that could be near Israel. We don't know. We're not too familiar with the world map, and it changes every other second.
Yeah,
But yeah,
Payrat's not familiar with a world map.
yeah, exactly. Soul Scriber says, I imagine Trey would help bring Actelius Slash down instead of going to Floss. And yeah, I could see that as a good reason to have him not go with Floss and instead go to Chandrar. Mr. Europe says, if Trey and the gang go directly to Chandrar, they might change the policy on slavery while they can. I think Rochelle is still way too powerful for them to do that right now. Clay says, in response to Soul Scriber, that would give Teresa her history-defining adventure too. It absolutely would. And she, as we know, she seems to be a bit of a glory hound. Melly says, if the Trey gang gets to Rhyme, they might go after Rochelle or Actelius Slash. If they meet up with Floss, they will fight with Fiddlehep. Floss needs his Archmage. I think Fiddlehep will get the Trey gang, since they might need Amaris. Imagine a Chaos Gamer at the Newt. Hehehehe. Sounds like fun. Exactly. Kel, you want to speak?
Yes, hello. For the first part, with what will Teres and them do with Rhyme, I think they will mostly buckle down. She's also got the Quaras floating around, well, coming back. I forget that she was in Wisdom somehow. Um, but yeah, I think most countries are taking the alarm generally seriously. So I think most of them will just hunker down. Nurhavi has fallen, just got their ass beat. So they're probably not too worried about that one right this second. As for Trey and the lot, I kind of hope I hope they meet up with Floss, and I hope this is after Floss has had some time to hear Pisces talk about his experiences with Rochelle, so that Floss can have some character growth and be already moving to the slavery is actually bad side of things, which, would be some character growth and Trey would appreciate.
Yeah, I think this is certainly a good time for Floss to grow as a person just by meeting a bunch of new people, by meeting a bunch of people who hate slavery. And it's like he's going into the middle of a war, and everyone there hates slavery. And
Well,
if
it
Amaris and Trey meet up with them, they'll definitely mention slavery as an issue.
it also echoes a little bit what Berrig said, that he'd always known about slavery, like he'd had slaves, but until he was actually a victim of it himself and like had to live with it, that's when he realized. And I think for Floss, it'll be a big eye awakening moment to actually see a slave that was treated like Trey had basically explained, um, and that he'll have to start to change his mind in the face of it.
Yeah, do you mean in that sense, are you talking about Pisces and how he's there and he's a former slave?
Well, as far as we know, I think he's still a slave, isn't he? He still has
Well,
the
yeah,
class.
okay. I don't know if he still has the class. I just meant former slave, as in he's a freed slave right now. But yeah, I get what you mean.
Well, he freed himself,
Yeah,
so he's more of a slave on the run than
yeah,
actually a freed slave. But um, yeah, I mean, I think that's part of why I was hoping that the Scourge Riders would also have picked up like Eloquay and Ropier in them, because it's really hard to argue when you're looking at a deeply traumatized little boy and a woman who was clearly tortured in a lot of different ways. I mean, Pisces has his stories and his scars, but it's a little different to see it in several shades of horror.
yeah, absolutely. Um, all right, let's go through the rest of these reactions and then we'll move on from this question. Spanner says any Terry's character development is welcome. Action Kermit says Floss already promised to destroy Actelio Solage for Trey, and this gives him a casus belli. Yeah, it's a great cause for war right now, simply because FedoHep is already going to bombard the hell out of the place, so might as well just jump on board. Spanner says he has the class still, he doesn't have Rebel like Barrick. Violet says, I think he did gain the Rebel class off screen, maybe. Spanner says, maybe. Clay says, in response to Spanner's point about the class, that's a good point, meaning Floss might be how it gets removed, how he gets it removed, but I like to think Aaron will remove it. I don't know how Aaron's gonna remove a class. She's not a queen, okay?
Not
It's
yet.
not. Um, did you want to say something, Ren?
I was just saying not yet. She's not a queen yet.
Oh yeah. Okay. Spanner says Queen of Celt. Clay responds to what I said, but haha, that's true, but she has done the skill throwing thing that mostly only royalty has done. Alright, let's move on from this question. Let's go on to the next one. This is actually an interesting one to think of for the next chapters. Floss is heading towards Israel. Will he lead the pro-Doom bearers against Zerhul in the Null Civil War, or do something else there? And I think Floss is definitely going to be one of the leaders for the Null movement, and he's going to be one of the key people on the Doom Bears side. And the consequences of that is that he's going to get some more allied Null tribes. Like, we've heard that quite a few of the Null tribes are, quite a few of the smaller Null tribes are actually seriously considering going to Chandrar because of Floss. And having him come there and help them in their civil war, or not their civil war, their war between the Drakes and the Nulls, like, that's going to help him. That's going to help his popularity immensely. And so I think that's going to seriously get some of those uh, pro-Floss tribes to actually consider moving to Chandra. And what do you think, Ren?
So I've not got much to add on what Floss is going to be like with the potentially leading pro-demon Doom Bearers against Sheer. But I did just realise this is going to be his chance to meet Eren in the flesh. And it might, if Trey's group unites with Floss and Feto on the sea, it will also be potentially Ghazi's reunion with Eren, which could be interesting to see if not in this volume, but in the next volume.
You know, that'll be something to see Eren and Ghazi reunited at last after their last interaction. And it'd also be, it just would be very fascinating to see how Eren will take Floss after, she's had some very strong opinions about him in the past, but she's met his architect, Drevish, now, and he's presumably told her some stories about Floss. So maybe her opinion of him has changed. It'll be interesting to see. Do you want to read these reactions out?
Yeah. So Clay says the pro-Doom Bearer. I keep saying Doom Bringers, but you should call them Doom Bearers. We have the pro-Doom Bearers don't really have a leader at the moment. I think Floss would be the perfect person to lead them. Possibly, yeah. counts as a random reminder that there's a group of gnolls at the Newt who want to take Flosser's deals. Claire also says, this is a great opportunity to help restore Norse heritage as world travelers. Spanner wants the plane's eye to fail. They are brainwashing Drake lovers. I do want their side of it explained though. The chieftain with a mental name genuinely thinks he's doing it for the right reasons. Yeah, sure, that's definitely a mental name. Base says that Eren will be royally confused if Floss protects militia. Probably, yeah. Action Karma says something that I believe is very accurate, and Floss meeting Eren and Ezreal would be Eren's chance to relay a message to Dravesh, with Spanner adding to it that Eren will call Floss a jerk to his face, then tell him about Dravesh. Also, Wiggles, I see what you did there about Eren and Gazi's reunion.
I hate your pun. I hate
Yeah,
it. I hate it.
it was literally spelled as an I for people listening. That doesn't help. Anyway, Feylat says Eren will serve them all at the end once she's back. It will be a wild post-arc end party. You mean at the end hasn't been blown up for like a 10 billionth time? Because it's definite. I could definitely see Kawaii having destroyed it inadvertently. Or advertently. Cosmic Chaos says that the level ups over level ups that would bring. I think regarding the post arc in party that Violet referred to. And it looks like that is it for this question so far.
Yep. So let's move on to another question. This is always a popular kind of topic. Can any country match Celt? Is there any country out there that is as powerful as Celt, has as many relics, all that? An example of that is, I guess, FedHub just resolved 3 plot lines in 1 chapter. And yes, that is a very good measure of how powerful somewhere is. And an additional question here is, FedHub knows about the death of change. Death of chains? What else does he know about the demons? In my opinion, about the Celt thing, I actually think Aelin Damas can match Celt. The Blighted Kingdom can match Celt. The Demon Kingdom can match Celt. And I think that's kind of it on who. Oh, Rochelle. Rochelle can
And
definitely.
also Draft, I think the Draft would.
I maybe I it's hard to gauge Drath right now because they're actually mentioned as being kind of weak nowadays, but they're still big. But yeah, maybe Drath, but I think Rochelle, Aelin Damas, BK, DK, all 4 of those nations can match Kelt right now. And about Fedahep knowing about the Death of Change and Death of Chains, he's sorry, Kelt's history does span before the Queller Wars, and it's not been broken or anything like that. So I'm sure he knows basically like everything there is to know about why that war is currently going on, what the what's behind it, and what's what. But Ren, what's your opinion on this question?
So I think that it makes sense that I think that most major powers are going to know who the different deaths are. At least details about them. And also, the Death of Chains did also go on her releasing spree only like a month before, and Fetterhelp was keeping his undead ear holes to the wind. So you would have definitely heard about the ramifications of that. And yeah, also there's the whole thing about how old Celt is and how old Celt rulers are. It's definitely the kind of thing that he should know about. And I think he knows a fair bit more.
Yeah, they have a magical artifact that shoots across their continent from the Cruller Wars still intact. So I just think it's natural that Celt and Fetohep would understand the reasoning behind the war and what's caused it and all that. All right, let's move on to some reactions. Spanner says Drath. Soulscriber says Rochelle. Aderon says Aelandamus. Violet says floss pre-depression. Yeah, definitely floss pre-depression. Kel says, yeah, Rochelle, sadly. Yeah, Rochelle's just like even we've already even gotten confirmation of this, but Fedaheb knowing everything he knows about their strength and how he could like do all of what he's just done, he still didn't think he could take Rochelle when Kelta asked them to a long time ago, like 30 chapters ago. Mr. Europe says Genie Town can do it. The Shield Kingdom. I know what Shield Kingdom you're talking about. It's something with an M. Yeah, something with an M Kingdom. Part-time Hermit says ants before Sleepy kick their asses. Ants right now might be a match for them too. Like maybe they could be a match for them right now even. Spanner says to Wiggle's skepticism, Drath, the people single-handedly keep the Seamwalkers back and have literal anime protagonists on a boat that no one will mess with. The Waning World is a thing, but yeah. Okay, so my point about Drath is that they keep Seamwalkers at bay, but it's like let's just assume it's one per year or something like that. It's not, and they're not anything like Actelio Slash. So they're going to be strong people. Don't get me wrong, but I think Drath isn't a huge world power anymore simply because they just have declined a lot. So I do think they're powerful. I just don't think they're Celt powerful. But yeah, that's my point on that. Clay says ants still or in response to part-time hermits about ants being able to kick their asses, ants still probably can or apparently can. Um, Melly says, whatever the outcome is regarding the Seamwalker invasion, the world's political, military, and power structure is about to change massively. This is a cataclysm event. Many nations will not survive. Those who are strong will become weak, and those who are weak will become strong. That type of situation, the current area is about to end. And a new one is about to be born out of this event. That is if anyone survives. Who do you think will sink and who will swim? Anyone on Kelt's side will swim. Anyone not on Kelt's side will sink. Simple. Pat says Myriad, which is the name for the Shield Kingdom. Thank you, Pat. Fedohep says, or Fedohep, part-time hermit. That'd be cool if you were Fedo. Says, if Fedo trained his people like Drath, would they, god damn it, would they be cultivators? Yes. Yes, they would be cultivators, okay, Hermit? They'd be cultivators. I hate you. Clay says, I'm not hugely concerned with the politics. I'm just hoping that my favorite characters survive. Uh, yeah, yeah, that'd be nice. Some of them can die, I guess, but not all of them. We want some of them around. Melly says, long live our soon-to-be new overlords, the Kitsune. Kitsune are best beasties. Okay.
I'm so glad you pronounced it relatively correct. I was about to say.
I know how to pronounce things, okay? Except things that don't know how to pronounce, like Zergluch. Um, let's move on now from this question.
But before we do, I just want to add one thing. So, I think another thing to consider with this question in particular is that a thing that's making Celt's march so powerful here is also the use of the ringing the bell and having things like the emergency ratified by the Iron Vanguard and by Draft. So at the moment, it's not just the power of Celt, which is obviously obscenely high, but also the power of everyone that's joining them. Yeah, that's all I can really say there, though.
Okay. I see a comment here that I want to address. Yes, I can pronounce Cotizetro. I just had to say it slowly, okay? Cotizetro. That's the correct. That's exactly how it's pronounced, okay? Exactly how it's pronounced.
Catastrophe.
Yes, probably that's better. Let's move on to the next question. Here, I think I'm gonna combine these questions. Yeah, I'm gonna combine these two. So the first part of the question is, what do we think the addition of gnomes and elves in the Deadlands will do? How might they affect the coming war? Additionally, and second part to this question is, Zarkoth and the gnomes/elves and other Belarusian ghosts seem to have some kind of plan for their final stand. What predictions do you have for what that plan is? So, let me just think about this for a second. Ren, do you have any pertinent thoughts right now?
So, I think that there's definitely going to be something significant about it. And it really does add a lot of credence to why Belarus was such a powerhouse in the Deadlands as a undead, a bastion of ghosts. If they had elves and gnomes, and we know that one of the biggest deterrents to the dead gods are powerful souls and things that are so tied to their users that they can carry an echo of it into the Deadlands. Yeah, as for predictions of where this is going and what the final plans of Zakia for the Belarusian ghosts is, dead gods, I have no idea.
It's kind of how I'm feeling right now. I don't know what their plan is, but it's gonna be something good. It has to be, because Zarkuth wouldn't like be so sure, so smug if they didn't have some extremely good plan to survive this. And that's my thought on the second part of the question. First part, what do we think the addition of gnomes and elves in the Deadlands will do? How might they affect the coming war? I think they're just gonna like flip it completely upside down. As someone else has pointed in the chat, gnomes and elves and dragons, yes, and dragons are some of the only peoples who might remember the gods. And even though like the gods seem to gain power from being acknowledged, it still means that they'll have knowledge on like what happened in the God Wars and what happened to like end it. So that kind of knowledge will help here a lot. So just having these beings present is going to mean a huge amount. let's move on to the reactions. Do you want to read them, Rin?
Yep. So Spanner wants to know why the Fae consider the Owls whores, and Aaron might get the box's secrets from the names for the Freelings. I don't think it's going to be that easy. Like, the gnomes were very deliberate with the last boxes, I think. So they're not just going to tell Aaron the secrets. I think the most that might happen is a few clues, but that's it. But I was saying, is it fair to say that Aaron seemed to recognize the owls, either from previous exposure in media or perhaps actual exposure from the N-World? And it's not quite what she or the others thought. Can we skip what Hamet's put there?
I'll read it out. Part-time Hermit says, you might say that the Belarus was a gnome man's land for the six. It's exclusively gnome man's land, not none, no man's, no, gnome man's, okay? It's not
Yeah.
it's, yeah. Go ahead, Ryan.
Donkey 2012 known as saying about how the gnomes, elves, and dragons in species we never make remember the gods. With us knowing that the dragons do, at least to some extent, because of with Teriarch cursing and Tamaros name. Violet says maybe give magic to the Deadlands. That could be interesting. Veskar says there are exactly 18 gnome souls left. Either the others are on the moon, got eaten by the gods, or saying that there is a soul dungeon and a soul trap artifact. Maybe they have some way to trap in new souls. Maybe gnome souls power the last boxes. Mel says that the boundary between the land of living and dead is as thin as a balloon that is being stretched to its breaking point. Once it's break, while we see the ghosts of gnomes, elves, dragons, and everyone else fighting in the land of living. Gravesong Book 3? Question mark. And Spanner, do the owls look like goblins? That's the real question.
Actually, excuse me, elves aren't goblins, okay? That's just, that's a theory that's not allowed here, okay? Just, come on, guys, come on.
Quick, before we summon Quelly.
Exactly, it's a very fearsome reaction you'll get if we have that kind of theory allowed in this space, okay? So just don't poke the bear, okay? Don't poke the bear. I think that's all the reactions we're getting for this comment or this question. If you have any more, keep typing them. We'll read them out. But we're gonna do 2 more questions and then we'll end it because it's already about an hour and a half, and I do feel bad for Asteria having to edit extremely long discussions. So let me think which questions. This is a good one. What is the political consequence for Wistrom being found flat-footed to the Seamwalkers' threat if they survive the coming storm? How much of a beating will Wistrom's reputation take, and how would affect their standing as a world power? Has Archmage Zelkir's selfishness doomed Wistrom? And yeah, this is a very good question because it's putting at a forefront Wistrom's lack of magical knowledge. And it's like the entire world is seeing Wistrom being taken down several pegs by every other magical entity around. And I really do think it will have a huge negative impact on their reputation if they don't turn it around and help this effort a lot. What do you think, Ren?
Yeah, and it's not just them being flat-footed, but you've seen walkers. They've just had they've let Amaris escape. They've an archmage has just been killed in their own halls, and yeah, they've been caught flat-footed. Everything is like everything that has been happening with Restrum since the arrival of the Earthers and the fact that they've been trying to they've been flaunting their power, their political power, a lot since the Earthers came, and it's really biting them in the ass.
Yeah. Melly, I saw you wanted to speak, but you deleted it. If you want to speak, you can just ping me again. Otherwise, it's fine. Oh, you can't talk right now. That's fine. Jamaro says, Nears once mentioned that their credibility is being eroded. With the last events, it's down in the gutter. Absolutely. It's a really big hit for how credible they seem. Spanner says, Wistrom is already a joke. The news network has literally proven them to be wanting. They need some real archmages. Yes, they do. And that is what Cognita needs to focus on. She needs to get through her vacation, go back, and let everyone up to the upper floors. Immediately. Immediately. Violet says, maybe Cogs finally opens the door after they try to fight for access. Melly says, there are other mage academies. And there certainly are, but I don't think any of them. Well, maybe Aelindamis and the Blighted Kingdoms and Demon Kingdoms come close, but I don't think any others come close to the magical knowledge that Wistrom has overall. There's several people typing, so I'm just gonna wait. Oh, Kel says it's time for those other academies to rise, I guess. And yeah, this is definitely one of the points of time that they could use this opportunity to get some nice publicity, nice power going. Base says, considering it was dangerous for Zelkir, they would be in serious danger. They would be in danger, but it's necessary to let them up into the top floors. It's just necessary. They need that information right now. Violet says, Wistrom is a sanctuary even in the Deadlands. Donkey says, Zelkir alone has not doomed Wistrom. They could have weathered through what he did, but they gave up instead. I don't know. Like Zelkir, he really, really destroyed them and with that test, and I don't think anyone could have gone through it as is. But yeah. Cosmic Chaos says there's suffering among world powers and those who keep a close eye on current events, but not necessarily among regular folk who they can hit with their propaganda. Germano says Visible Seedin, forgotten. Listen, Visible is not that great, okay? They're not as good as Wistrom, okay? Okay? They're just not. They're just not.
And I really can't see them accepting non-drakes.
Yeah, you can't have the best Magic Academy around if you're just accepting drakes, who, from what we've been told, aren't even like the most magically inclined race, like something like half elves. If you don't have half elves, you're not very good at Magical Academy. Okay. Melly says knowledge that they might have but can't reach. Part-time Heron, it says, wonder if Anna Zooland detected anything. They might have. They certainly have experience with ghosts. Spanner says, at least other academies have access to all their facilities. They aren't that far behind anymore. That's true. Part-time Hermit says, to be fair to Festival, and the Zooland also only accepts one species. And yeah, they're not that great either, okay? It's necessary, but they're not that great. Okay? I think that's it for this question. Oh, Soulscriber says, Nurhavia's 1,000 tome library. I don't think it's as good as Wistrom either. But maybe it is. We'll see someday. Maybe. Or never. You never know. Alright. I did say we're gonna Melly says so they might survive, but their reputation will be in the trash. Yes. I do think Wistrom will survive this, but I think they'll take a big hit. Unless they finally get access to the upper floors. I think that'll be all for this question. I did say we're only doing 2 more questions, but someone added a question last second that I really like and want to talk about. So we're going to do 3 overall, and this was the second to last one. So what do you think is happening with Narishal, the Blighted King's Chronomancer? Is God interacting with him, or maybe Alien Domus's Great General? And yeah, it's a very interesting point that's being brought up there. Why is it that Narishal seems to have such a huge reaction to what's going on? Like someone like the Death of Magic, she knows something's happening in the Deadlands. Like she senses it, but she's not physically ill for large periods of time. And I have a theory on why that is. I think, based on what Teriarch said before about time mages just like disappearing in the middle of battles, and then we saw Dioname disappear in the middle of a battle, but she didn't actually disappear. She was consumed by a horror. A horror that Tyrion had seen once washed up on the shore of Tarandria. Yeah, that doesn't say Seamwalkers, but it almost certainly means Seamwalkers. So I'm going to assume it's Seamwalkers. So we know Teriarch says that time mages disappear in the middle of battles. We saw Dio disappear in the middle of a battle because a a Seamwalker came and grabbed her soul and nommed it. And now we have Narishal, getting physically ill just by the presence of so many scene walkers in the Deadlands. And so I think all 3 of those things are really connected, and the steam walkers are like they have some connection to time magic in some way, and like they either have time magic powers themselves, or like their domain from where they came from is like really close to time or something. I don't know, magic nonsense, but they have some relation to time magic in uh, in how they're like constructed or whatever. But yeah, that's my theory. What about you, Ren?
I think it might. I think it might be a case of like their mere presence is a form of spatial distortion, and as we know, there is a irrevocable link between space and time. So as they're effectively bending cosmic perception, it's also warping time to an extent, or at least how certain people experience time, which is felt more keenly by chronomancers and other people that make use of time magic. But who knows, with eldritch monstrosities from a literal hole in the world.
Yeah, it's really hard to know any concrete information. So we'll see soon enough. How about go ahead and read out the reactions?
Okay, so Jamaro says that timey-wimey seamwalkers are making him nauseous. Bottomell as saying that it has something to do with what his actual class is rate, possibly. Vasca says maybe Dinami will burst out of his chest. That would be horrifying. I'm getting flashbacks to the end of Sekiro. Donkey says I think good enough time ages can get glimpses of vague feelings about their futures and their deaths. I think this also has to do with how Deer's soul got eaten early. Spanner says now that Deer was sucked into the void, stupid Burger King mage as the one holding the Seamwalkers back with time magic. Since he was the second strongest and now is the strongest time mage. Violet says that maybe she sacrificed his time as well. Now, saying that the Seamwalkers are looking at Naja like a cat looks at a mouse on a fancy plate. They see him, but he does not see them. Time mage, instant death, sickness.
Or time mages. Just can't catch a break. But Nourishal deserves it.
I agree.
Alright. I think that's all the questions from the story that I wanted to cover, for this talk. But there was one question that was kind of a meta question I liked. How do you guys feel about getting this chapter with no stream? I know some of you are stream viewers, so how did it feel not having a stream for once? Was it good? Was it bad? Was it fine? Did you not care because you don't watch streams? What was it like? What about you, Ren? How'd you feel?
Well, I don't watch the streams, but like, with my own writing and my own editing, I stream it, so I know why Pirate does it, and I can see what's valuable. But I also understand why this is the kind of thing that you don't want to stream to a wide audience. But as a reader, it's in a way it's kind of a good experience for someone who doesn't watch the streams. So I'm getting to experience the chapter for the first time with everyone else, as opposed to having a slight delay and having that extra anticipation makes it a wee bit more
Right, so
exciting.
going over a week with Zero was, I normally watch back stream, bite-size it. I do get it. I definitely agree with that kind of thing. I love seeing other people's reactions to chapters. Unless those reactions are a lot of negative stuff, then I kind of hate it. But as long as it's not, purely negative, it's really fun to have reactions to chapters going on. Soul Scriber says, the suspense of having a big drop all at once makes the chapter that much sweeter. Bismir says, I think not streaming was valuable because there were a few controversial things this chapter that people were somewhat bothered about. I'm glad that Pirate got to write what they wanted to without such thoughts bothering them. And yeah, one thing I will say is just like imagining there being a chat for as soon as Aaron was like said to die, like immediate or not die, sorry. Her body was taken. Sorry. That was completely wrong thing. As soon as Aaron's body was like shown to be taken, I can already imagine the amount of uh, negative reactions there would have been in chat immediately. And it's like we didn't really get to how Fetohep, like has this plan to turn around, how he is like doing everything in his power to make it so it doesn't happen and it doesn't get worse. But with the Twitch chat scenario, you get those reactions to the bad situation right away, even though there's those bits coming up that kind of work you through it some more. And so yeah, having without that kind of pressure right there from Twitch chat, I think it definitely helps them. Though it's obviously their choice. Kylara says, I liked it. Sometimes Pirate doesn't want feedback. Stream chat is fun, but sometimes problematic. Yeah, it certainly can be. Mr. Europe says, I can continue to not watch stream, but I also don't get any FOMO. Win-win. Don't know exactly what you mean by that, Mr. Europe. If you want to explain a little bit, I'll be fine with that. Edoron, since you wanted to say something, go ahead.
Yeah, it's kind of a new question. Also, not nothing about the stream. It's about the Horns and their reunion. Now that they're back together and everybody did a little bit, I kind of noticed, I mean, that the rest of the team definitely caught up to Pisces. In my head, Pisces was always the strongest of all of them. But now, I mean, Syria is kind of broken a bit with that crown. And the other twos get major power-ups as well. I don't know if I missed anything, but Pisces kind of got the bad end. He got the slave class. I don't know if that's really good for combat or helpful. I don't think so. And yeah, if I'm the only one who thinks that the power dynamic definitely changed. And the other thing is, I wanted to ask if when or how far are the Horns away from being a named team? Individually, I don't think that they're on the level, but when they're working together, I mean, two of these behemoths now instead of one, it sounds a bit disgusting. And yeah, that's what I wanted to ask.
For the name team question, at least, I have a thought. I definitely think as a team together, they're like right on the cusp of becoming a named ranked team. And if any of them, like any one of them, hits level 40, they'll be a named ranked team, just not individually named ranked adventurers. Ren, do you have any thoughts about this question?
Yeah, no, I'm pretty much agree with that. Maybe two of them hitting level 40 instead of just one. But yeah, definitely on the cusp.
Okay, I'm going to read out some of the reactions here. Soulscriber says, to me, Pisces grew as a person instead of pure power. Development on other aspects. And yeah, the pure power aspect isn't nearly as there for Pisces' development in Celt, but he grew a lot in how he views necromancy, how he views teammates, how he views other people. You know, and
That's true.
that's valuable. It is.
Yeah.
Melly, you wanted to speak.
Yeah, you guys kind of just talked about what came to my mind. I believe that they are all now pretty even on the levels and the power that they're able to provide, and that they probably will be a name team very soon. But to the point of Pisces, he might not have gotten anything from the slave class, but his determination, his character, has grown tremendously. When in the last chapter, when he was charging against the chariots, he didn't blink, he didn't waver, he didn't have any second thoughts. He saw what needed to be done, and he went. His determination and character has grown so much that if you think back several volumes, he was on the path to becoming the next necromancer, and it's his team that pulled him away, and now he's dedicated to life. He's dedicated to protecting the people he loves and cares about using his skills. He is no longer, I hate life, I love life, and I will protect life with death, and he will look into the void and stare back at it. His character has grown tremendously from the slave class, even if he did not gain anything skill wise.
Yeah, I tend to absolutely agree with that. Just he saw a lot of character development as he saw a lot of character development in his adventure on Chandra. Spanner says, I disagree. Pisces has the outside of the system box's magic book. He will be super OP soon. Maybe.
But that crown that Syria has, I mean, am I the only one who thinks the thing is a little bit too broken? I mean, she created a bone mirror behemoth by herself again, and yeah, the other everybody now has some really high class trump cards with Kissenver and his style that he now got with Syria, Yvonne and her like morphing arms. I don't. Yeah, I mean, character development, of course, is important, and maybe that's what Pisces that was the thing was holding him back. But in my head right now, Pisces is, I don't know, the weakest link. It's I don't want to say weakest link because they're a team. They all work together, but even the way Kissenver just disbanded the 10 guys around them, it's just I don't know if Pisces could have done that at this point so easily. So yeah,
Oh, they do keep in mind that these characters always have room to grow. And it's like
yeah, of course.
they're not static and they're not stuck in these points forever. They can keep growing. And I think Pisces' development and Chandra is very important for his character
Yeah,
rather than just his power.
that's definitely true.
Comrade Burv says Pisces just needs more time and very well may learn thaumaturgy. So I don't think Pisces was nerfed, and he did learn how to make skeleton lords, the potential of which we don't know yet.
Oh, forgot about that part. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, skeleton lords are a big thing. Vesker says Pisces also grew a lot by being taught to not to forget basic human hygiene. Yeah, that can go a long way. All right. I think this is where we'll stop the recording for this chapter.
Yeah, we don't want to kill Asteria with editing.